former three-term congressman. He was undersecretary at the Department of Homeland Security under President George W. Bush, and he was an impeachment manager in the case against President Clinton. Welcome, Governor, from Little Rock, Arkansas. Thank you for being with us today. Can I turn to something that's super important and obviously was determinative during this last election, and that is obviously COVID in the United States and the vaccine rollout. Your state seems to be doing better with deaths and cases coming down and vaccines rolling out. Just give me a picture of how it's going in Arkansas.
Well, it is going well, even though we have a limited supply of the vaccine. And as long as that is limited, it's going to be slower than we'd like. But we are doing well. We're getting over 60% of our doses out very quickly. Whenever it's a first dose, we get it into the arms within 72 hours of when it gets here into the state. And we're getting better and better at it every day. We continue want to improve. And I applaud the fact that with the Biden administration, we now have 16% increase in our vaccine supply, followed by another 5% that's going to be increased late this week. And so that will help us to do more. But our cases are going down. People have to continue to make sure, one, they take the vaccine when it is their turn and realize that it is safe and it is necessary. And then secondly, until the vaccine is widely distributed, we have to continue to be disciplined with wearing a mask, socially distancing. We're trying to do that here in Arkansas.
You know, you are, I guess, one of the rare Republicans who publicly has praised what you've called the seamless vaccine, efforts under this new administration. And you've said that you have a pretty good partnership with the federal government. You probably know that President Trump's own pollsters, the former president, in the autopsy on his loss in November, essentially attributed to his mishandling of the COVID crisis. I mean, the very fact of life and death was at stake. So how do you compare, let's say, as governor of your state, the previous administration's handling of this and the current administration's? What are the big structural differences you see?
Well, that's a great question. And when I referred to it as being a seamless transition, it's really a compliment to the professionals on the Trump administration coronavirus task force as they handed off to the Biden administration, and it's been seamless, and that's important for the states because we don't want that supply chain to be interrupted. And there absolutely is differences in style and leadership and comments from the presidential level, but if you look underneath that to the professionals, to the Vice President's leadership, Vice President Pence on the coronavirus task force, and with what's happening under President Biden, it is the same level of commitment, professionalism, understanding the importance of getting the vaccines out, accelerating the production. And so I'm sure that there will be differences, but from a governor's standpoint, it was critical that they hand this off well, and I think that's been done. Obviously, I asked the Biden administration, well, how are we getting this new supply? Did you just find it somewhere? And of course, I said that jokingly, but the answer is, just like we get better in the states, the manufacturers get better as well, improve their processes, so I hope that supply continues to increase.
And again, you complimented the Biden administration for seamless distribution of the vaccine. So I want to ask you what you're thinking. I know you're a governor and this is happening in Congress and with the White House, but this $1.9 trillion, basically the bailout bill for hurting American families, where do you think it's going to land? And I just want to play, because obviously there's some, pushback from Republicans. They want it smaller or differently targeted. But this is what the Republican governor of Virginia has said about this moment now.
Trying to be, per se, fiscally responsible at this point in time, with what we've got going on in this country, if we actually throw away some money right now, so what? We have really got to move and get people taken care of and get people back on balance. And I want to work with the Biden administration just like I worked with the Trump administration, and I want us to move forward.
So, of course, I misspoke. It's the Governor, Jim Justice of West Virginia, as you clearly know better than me. So where do you stand on this coronavirus relief bill? Where do you think it's going to land?
Well, more importantly than going big, we need to go reasonable on it. And I think it is a fair debate as to exactly the dollar amount that should be contained in the relief package. Everyone agrees that the states need money for vaccine administration. We need additional funds in terms of education, keeping our schools open. We need to also make sure that we provide relief for small businesses that are still hurting. And the stimulus checks are important. But at the same time, there is a fair debate as exactly how large that package should be and make sure it goes to the right people. And for the Biden administration to say, we're just going to stick with our plan, we're not going to seek compromise with the Republican side, I think is short-sighted. For example, in Arkansas, we have right now a $240 million surplus. We have a 4.9% unemployment rate. And so our economy is doing well. We don't need $1.9 trillion to boost the economy right now. We need a smaller amount to do that with the assistance to the states. So I think we have to be common sense about this and recognize that it's borrowed money, and we need to be careful about exactly the amount that we borrow and we send out to the states for these needs.
Understood that sometimes it has to be carefully targeted, but really interesting to hear major economists across all sorts of, even the IMF and wherever you look, including in the United States, say that it's never been a better time to lend money. There is just so much at good rates right now. Can I ask you, though, about your own party? So you kind of stand out in the Republican firmament of having acknowledged 2 days before the Capitol Hill insurrection and when Biden's election victory was meant to be certified, you said Joe Biden is our president-elect. You attended the inauguration, you spoke, as we've just talked about, to his transition team, and you've pretty much been following the constitutional playbook. Do you feel somewhat out of step with your party when you see how the majority of Republicans in the House, which you used to be a member of, voted not to certify his election, and all the stuff that's going on now? Where do you think you fit in the regular Republican Party?
Well, I don't feel out of step at all. I do believe that the Republican Party needs to return more to its roots. We need to make sure that we concentrate on sound fiscal policy, less regulation, and growing the private sector of our economy, things that have really brought people together within the Republican base. We've got sidetracked in the last 4 years, but with a very dominant personality, and that has created division. The election has created division within our party and how we've responded to it. And so I don't feel out of step, but I do believe I want to without any question, engage in the debate to help lead the Republican Party back to its roots. That's a fight that is important for us. And what's happening in Congress, both on the Senate side with the impeachment trial and on the House side with the debate about a member who offered these atrocious comments that I reject, that the party should reject, that is the debate's going to go on for some time. But we need to get back to our roots, and we need to get away from that extremist element that has moved our country in the wrong direction in some areas.
So let me just talk about this member who you've just mentioned. You know, atrocious comments, you say you reject them. As we said, the Senate minority leader, Republican Mitch McConnell, has called them loony lies, a cancer on the party. And yet the House, where she's a member, seems to be trying to have it all ways. The Republicans are not censuring her, and they're also coming to the support of the moderate, traditional Republican who's been under great fire, and that is Liz Cheney, who comes from a top-notch Republican pedigree, obviously, with her family history. Can you have it all ways? Can you really have your Republican Party and this loony, as we might call it now, the loony right, as they used to say, the loony left, gaining so much strength and power?
Well, the fact that Liz Cheney defended her vote for the impeachment as a vote of conscience, that they retained her in leadership, shows that you can differ from others and still have a vote of conscience like this. So I think this speaks very well of our Republican conference and the fact that they have embraced and understand the importance of the liberty of Liz Cheney in her vote. In terms of the other Congresswoman that has said these things that are outlandish, that's a different category, because those are statements that have hurt people, that have misrepresented our party, and have been disavowed. In fact, she has now had to disavow them herself. That's a tough call because she's elected. You don't want to deprive a district of representation, but also a seat on a committee. But we've done that in the past. I know that back in the 2000s that we, as a Republican Party, took the committee assignments away from Steve King for statements that he made. And so it is a different environment now. For my vote, I would say that she should be not on those committees simply because we've got to distance ourselves from those kind of comments that are conspiratorial, that are hurtful, and embrace violence.
Mm-hmm. So it's very interesting to hear you say that as one of the grandees of the Republican Party. And yes, she did have to come and do a mea culpa, knowing that the House was going to vote and that the Democrats had the votes and that, you know, she was going to be voted off these committees. And she did not denounce this QAnon. She, in fact, equated it with the media. She played the victim. You know, she did the whole, 9 yards as usual. So it's really interesting to hear what you say. But I want to also just push you a little bit, because I want to ask you, you used to be a U.S. attorney. I said you were in the Department of Homeland Security. You've had many, many major important government jobs over your career and elected jobs. I think I heard you say that 4 years of allowing President Trump to finally end up with this Capitol insurrection may not have been wise. And I guess I'm trying to figure out whether you think the head of the snake of this QAnon new generation needs to be cut off now before it becomes unmanageable.
Well, absolutely. If you're talking about QAnon, we reject that.
And those who
That's gotta
support
be
it,
cut off.
I'm sorry, this woman who supports it, any elected official who supports it.
I don't know if you can make that judgment carte blanche, but I wouldn't want anyone that embraced that conspiratorial theories to represent me. I would not vote for them. I would not want them to be associated with our party. Now, let me go back to President Trump, though. He was good on policy. He did a lot of good things for the Republican cause, for America, that I fully support. And I don't want to distance myself from those things. I embrace those things. But in terms of how the election was handled, how it misled Americans, that the election was stolen from him, we're still reaping damage from that. And that's what we've got to remedy very quickly and make sure we're not going to go down that path again.
Mm-hmm. Look, I'm going to push you again, because the former Senator John Danforth, of course, another lion of the Republican Party, has said that your party has become, quote, a gross caricature of what the Republican Party has traditionally been. And I know you say Donald Trump has been good for policy in some of the instances that you mentioned, but he also launched a major attack on the Constitution and on your own democracy. So where do you think the party is headed? When you see all this, plus the impeachment that's going to happen, or, the trial rather, in the Senate, where do you see this landing, and how long do you think it's going to take to iron out these issues within your party to make it, a two-party system like it's meant to be in the United States, as opposed to unelectable as we saw in the last election?
Well, first of all, the Republican Party had a very good election cycle, increasing representation in our state legislators, in Congress. The Senate, we split. And so, other than losing the top position of president, we had a very good election cycle. We are going to go through a very difficult 2 to 4 years, because these are going to be primary issues. It's going to be fighting for the heart and soul of our party. There's going to be division there. There's going to be primary contest. And the next couple of weeks are going to be challenging, because people are going to have to express themselves on these issues in the United States Senate. And so, but the history of the Republican Party has been diminished in times past. They say we're not going to survive an election. We do. We're going to be a major player in the next, we're going to win whenever you look down the road, because the American people do embrace the conservative philosophy that we offer. They just do not want to have us dominated by extremism, and that's what we've got to avoid in the coming 2 years.
You know, you lost the White House, you don't have the House, you pretty much don't have the Senate, and you lost Georgia. These were pretty big losses that many are putting at Donald Trump's doorstep. But can I ask you this? You are not running again. You're coming up to the end of your second term. You're unable, under the Constitution of your state, to run again. And Sarah Huckabee Sanders, who, as we remember, was President Trump's White House press spokesman woman, she's running. She's the daughter of a former Arkansas governor. She's raised a lot of money already, but she was known to be one of the least truthful adherents to facts and truth during her time on the podium. You know, do you support her candidacy? Will you vote for her?
Well, I've got 2 years left in my term. I'm going to concentrate on that. Yes, the election has started for 2022. There's 3 candidates in there now. There's likely to be more. I'm going to stay out of it. That's probably the smartest move I've made politically for some time. And they're going to have a hard-fought contest in the primary and presumably the general election. I expect the seat to stay Republican after I leave the governorship, and I know the people of Arkansas will decide that issue.
So, kind of yes or no, if she's the candidate, you'll vote for her?
Well, I'm not going to say who I will vote for. That's 2 years away, and I'm not taking sides in that election. And so we'll wait and see how the campaign goes. But I'm neutral on that. I'm not taking sides on it. There's some really good candidates that are offering themselves.
And it was extraordinary for all of us as members of the press to watch her, you know, really wage this war on truth throughout her time on the podium. Anyway, I didn't hear a ringing endorsement from you, Governor, so thank you very much for your perspective. Really valuable. You've said some really interesting things this evening to us. Governor Asa Hutchinson, thanks for joining us from Little Rock. Now, we turn next to a gruesome murder.